After watching Dungeons & Dragons Honour Among Thieves, I thought I should revisit the original to see if it's as bad a film as I remember. Oh wow, is it?
Worthless steaming pile of cow dung, figuratively speaking.
I can see why I had forgotten everything other than this being a bad film, and why it had taken so long for this franchise to recover to the mainstream. Unlike the two other Dungeons & Dragons films, the sequels to this movie, Wrath of the Dragon God and The Book of Vile Darkness, that most people have never heard of, and neither had I. What's the story about, you ask? Well, evil wizard wants to take over the empire by turning the Wizards' Council against the young empress, using her perceived radical ideas of equality between the commoners and the mages as a threat to their power. Even the empire itself. They demand the empress relinquish her staff that controls dragons as a way to acknowledge their concerns and show that she is not a threat to the council. During this time, the Empress learns there's another staff with similar power that controls red dragons, allowing the Empress to give up her staff while keeping the power to control dragons without the Council's knowledge. Prothean, the evil wizard, also learns of its existence, spying on the Empress, thus begin the quest to find the staff before the evil wizard's henchmen do, to prevent Prothean getting his hands on it and taking over the Empire. This quest is undertaken by an unlikely group of misfits accused of a murder they did not commit, with the only way to clear their names being to find the staff for the Empress. Let's start with the story, shall we? In itself, it's fine, the usual fate of the world affair, but I can tell you its execution is bad from start to finish. There are multiple glaring issues right at the start of the story that are never explained why characters acted the way they do. Prothean, for example, is playing the long game, scheming to force the Empress to lose the staff and then bump her off, or cause a civil war and kill her in the conflict to gain the staff. But why, is my question. Could he have not just killed her or assassinated her in some way, as she is often seen alone with no guards? Wizards are able to portal almost anywhere. It is even shown that he is a creature spying on her. Could he have not used this or something else just to kill her? As for the staff itself, it only controls dragons, it does not make you invincible, and she is not shown to have any martial prowess whatsoever, or magical ability. Let's say he could not do this. He had to go the long way round. Prothean's ultimate plan to cause a civil war seems rather haphazard to say the least. He has been putting into place all these different plans to ultimately to end up at the top of one tower with a few mages and a couple of ballistas against the Empress's army and all her dragons. Really? That's it?
Not a great plan.
A tower that an army could storm or portal in. Hell, the dragons could just blow up the tower if you know they don't attack the only place that is protected. Prothean, for some reason, could not go after the staff. Alright, you say he had to be at the council meeting to cause the civil war. I say he could just portal to get there when he's needed. The story has another issue with the actual quest itself, that if the Misfit group had just burnt the map and not gone after the staff, everything would have ended up the same, if not better. The city would have taken less damage, less people and dragons would have died. The only thing is that the group of misfits would have not got all the praise at the end and the minor character growth, and one character would have survived. As for when they are on the quest, the whole part with the maze in the Thieves Guild to get the Dragon's Eye is unnecessary and stupid. It should have been either somewhere else, or at least make it so that people cannot spectate from above, as you know what that means? You can skip to the penultimate room and break into the last one. By force, especially after
Waited 15 years for someone to come along and pick that lock.
let alone one of the traps being a pressure trap, and then multiple times the main character stepping on the wrong one, and he even runs past the last part of it, and could have done that for the whole thing. It's just pointless and stupid, and it has nothing on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Now, as for the actual action scenes, there's not a good one among them. Most are bad.
Oh, you want to play, do you?
The Crimson Brigade, Prothean's henchmen, are just terrible, letting them get away multiple times, trained soldiers being bad in combat, even 2-on-1 against an untrained thief and losing, soldiers in armour falling over from light blows, not pulling out their weapon for a kill in a fight, forces and creatures under their command like the beholders in the castle section disappearing. They are not a threatening foe at all. Also in the castle section, none of the elves, the dwarf, or any of the other people that travel with Ridley and the mage enter the fight because they need to do it themselves for some reason. Another part of this section between Damodar and Ridley, the main character, where he gets beaten, he tells Damodar he has the Dragon's Eye that Damodar wants, instead of just killing Ridley and taking it off his corpse, Dumbledore tells him to give it to him. Just kill him. Why are you wasting time? And also the mage just stands watching instead of helping him with magic during the fight. As she was shown right at the start of the film that she can knock him out if she uses magic. I will say just before this fight, I did like how Dumbledore destroyed snails. It was like finally a villain who can fight. Why did you not do this earlier? But I did find it funny Ridley's reaction to that fight. This movie also suffers in the action area from a character is doing an action or talking, so we need to wait till they finish. The last fight suffers this, and the not using a weapon to end the fight to draw it out. Ridley does this in the last fight. He can kill Profian if he uses a sword from earlier, but goes for a tackle instead. And in this fight, Profian not using magic to win the fight instantly, when he could have done it multiple times. You're a mage, use magic. Stop going for hand to hand. For one, Profian can stop Ridley when he has the staff, with magic. Also in this last fight, Ridley gets a random power up, and Dumbledore gets worse, for no reason. Another part of this fight that just shows you that it wasn't thought out very well is that characters portal right into where the fight is, which begs the question, why was everyone else not just doing this? Why did the Empress and her soldiers not? Why did she ride on the dragon over? I will say though, as for the magic in these action scenes, it is flashy, looks bad at times, but I don't mind it. Just that all the other mages other than Profian never use magic when they should be using it, just standing around most of the time. The mage in the Misfit group being one of these cases. Even Profian, the most powerful mage shown, doesn't use it nearly as much as he should or could. Let's address the dragon in the room and everything else CG in this movie.
What is that? Ugh, it's hideous!
It ranges from some of the buildings and backgrounds being very first time to passable or bad now. By far the worst offender when it comes to CGI is the monsters that were naff when the movie came out and are even worse on the eyes now.
Don't look right! Keep your eyes shut!
There's only one instance when I said that's a nice touch that they did not have to put in, and it's the beholder's retracting its eyes to pass through a door. The CGI is used far too much in this movie. If they had used it more sparingly, it would have been used to much better effect, and using far more practical effects and model work would have held up much better to the test of time. As movies like Jurassic Park still look good, and that was released in 1993, 7 years before this, or Terminator 2, with the T-1000 as it passes through the metal bars. Looks great from 1991, almost a decade before this. Hell, Jason and the Argonauts, a movie with stop motion, looks better with the skeleton scene from 1963. To put this into even more perspective, 1 year after this, the masterpiece Lord of the Rings came out, with the Balrog, the Nazgul, and Gollum. Look fantastic. To show that CGI in fantasy can be great. The CGI in this movie was not up to what it could have been and should have been for the time it came out. The reason for this failure, be it Mount Budget Time or a combination of all three, led to this disaster. In contrast to this bad CGI, there are positives I can give this movie. The practical effects, locations, costumes, humanoid creatures, makeup still looks good. And I especially did like the touch of Dumbledore's makeup changing with the red veins the longer the worm creature was inside his head during the course of the movie. Though a negative costume for me was the Empress's armour, it was poor compared to many others. The Crimson Brigade didn't look that great compared to what it could have been. Also the sets in places do look good, and which is why people advocate for practical CGI to this day as they hold up to the test of time. With that small fleeting glimpse of good out the way, let's get to one of the worst things about this movie, the characters and their acting. The acting ranges from Plank Empress to Profian hamming up almost every line. It was almost like it was in a panto. I will say though, Profian was by far the most entertaining.
Let their blood rain from the sky!
Even if he was a wasted character compared to what he could and should have been as a competent, intelligent villain, the mastermind pulling all the strings.
This time, Dumbledore, don't fail me.
As for Dumbledore, he was fine sometimes, inactive in many scenes where he could have been fighting or just being more competent as a leader. He often just stands around telling others what to do, while if he had taken a more active role, the scenes would have played out much more interesting. As he fights later on to just show what he could have done, he is another mostly wasted character.
Look at me!
Especially with his background of possibly being forced by Profian due to fear.
Profian's desire to dethrone her. I do not obtain rot, I will die.
Another bad part of this movie with Damodar is he loses the first fight he has ever really shown. He gets knocked over by the mage and then knocked over by the dwarf within a couple of minutes. So he lost a lot of his menace almost straight away. The main two antagonists are not much of a threat as they could have been, which caused a lacking sense of danger throughout the movie. The real problem though is the hero misfit group, the people you're supposed to care about and be interested in their journey throughout the movie. Ridley, the main character, was a bit too competent, a bit of a Mary Sue, actually being able to do almost everything by himself and honestly could have for just being a thief. Unlike with Egan in the latest Dungeons & Dragons movie, who needs his group of friends to make up for his shortcomings. Ridley did not need this, but I will say he was okay as a character. Fine for the most part. He gets random power-ups in the end of the fight.
Oh, look. I've got you. What a shame.
Needed more time to flesh his character out, as Ridley randomly turns out to have special abilities, but the only reason he is even on this quest is that he fancies Marina the mage and decides to help her get the stuff. As for the mage, she is not nearly as competent or uses magic as much as she should, as at the start she's whipping out spells, showing her abilities, and then later on doesn't seem to do anything other than follow Ridley around, when she could have used it in many situations and everything probably would have been easier, if not better, if she had. Sure, she's a fish out of water and a bit of a damsel in distress, but that doesn't change the fact that she should have been more competent. However, her relationship with Ridley does have a bit of character growth, with them both getting over their prejudice of commoners in her case and mages in Ridley's for some character growth, but they both needed more time and character moments to flesh them out more and make them just more interesting. As for the other members of the party, the elf tracker is a big nothing and a bit useless for being the best tracker around, letting Damodar capture the mage and the map under her nose. If she hadn't been there, you probably would barely have noticed.
As you wish.
The dwarf, once again, forgettable and does not do much compared to the first few scenes he's in, where it seems like he will be an important character and then he's a big nothing. Also strangely, the reason he helps the group is for possible payment when he could just collect their bounty.
If I ain't drinking, you sure ain't shopping. Gotta get yourself a nice 250-pound dwarf, huh? Well, hair on her chin you can hang on to.
The Empress is a plank of wood. In supposedly emotional scenes, she just kind of acts the same as in normal conversation. Once again, forgettable.
What have I done?
Then we get to the worst character in my opinion, who I honestly celebrated, spoilers, dying, Snails. He was just annoying throughout the movie. Right, for starters, he would never have been a thief. He is more like Ridley's baggage. He is just there to be annoying, not do anything useful. He just gets in the way all the time.
Now don't touch anything else.
The actor plays the character so close to his role in Scary Movie, I kept expecting him to come out with,
She had the fat ass, son.
so it dragged me out of the fantasy movie. A terrible character, all round. I would have cut him out this movie entirely. Then more time could have been spent with the other characters like the elf and the dwarf to give them larger roles and also have fleshed out the love story, because honestly you wouldn't have noticed the elf, the dwarf, if they had been cut from this movie entirely. Overall, this movie falls flat on its face. It fails to create an entertaining story or have interesting, engaging characters. In other words, you don't care about the quest that the characters are on or what's happening to them in this journey, which leads you to just being bored throughout the whole movie. The CGI is bad, but that is not the main reason for this movie failing, as the bad CGI can be looked past for good stories and especially characters, which is often the case with many older sci-fi shows, Babylon 5 being the prime example. They often update old CGI, as that is something that can be changed. Bad writing, poor and annoying characters cannot. Unfortunately, this movie is not even comically bad that you can laugh at it like some older movies. Speed 2. It's just boring, especially with so many great fantasy movies, shows, games. There is no reason to watch this and much better ways to spend your time. Anyway, if you lasted this long, hope you enjoyed it and see you in the next one.